Hey, we made it.
Wait a minute. What the hell's going on, Hunley?
Camera troubles. So using the built-in camera today.
Looks good. Looks okay.
Yeah, it is what it is. Hopefully the sound is good and everybody hears us all right.
Does the sound okay? The people in the super chat? People in the super comment section?
I'm sure they'll let us know if it's not sounding good.
There was a great shout out by Viva about they went on, they did a story by Viva about Robert De Niro's lawsuit against his, which we covered on Friday, with his secretary, how she got like $1.5 million. They didn't really get into it. Barnes thought that she was a millennial, but I think she was much older. She'd been with him for a number of years.
Gen X maybe, or
I think she'd been with him for 15 years. I didn't understand millennial, but anyway.
Well, millennials are 40 now.
Oh, well, man, she looked like she was 50, but who knows with that guy torturing her and forced to scratch his back. And anyway, they were talking about Robert said that she wasn't his type and that his type were Amazon types with whips, which I thought was pretty funny. And then Viva said he only learned about his type from me through the word of the day from a long show we did a while ago, I guess, on Coprophagia, and that was the word of the day, and Viva just loved that. So,
oh yeah, it's always
anything in that area. That's Viva's wheelhouse. Anything when you get into a Beavis and Butthead universe, that's what he loves.
Well, I love it too. It's fun to say like what is it? I think Futa was another one that came up, but all these different things that he's and then you get to watch him Google in real time. There's nothing better than his reactions.
I know.
It's like the corruption of Viva Fry.
Yeah. But okay.
So who do we have today? We've got somebody else. The corruption.
Well, this is like the guy that we did who was running around Europe. Saying that he had decoded the messages of the assassination. It's kind of like one of these obscure figures in the. Let's see. He's got his own card.
That guy?
Yeah, that guy's got his. Maybe this guy will get his own card.
That's right. He will. He's got his own show. He'll get
his
own card.
What's his full name?
Eugene Dinkin.
No, but he had a middle name too. Eugene.
This is Edward. Eugene B. Dinkin. I don't know.
Yeah, I forgot what the B stood for. That's what I was wondering about. Edward. Dinkin was one of those guys who is at the level of this guy. I mean, they're not the same story. Obviously, it's two different stories. But in terms of obscurity in the JFK assassination folklore, Webster is really obscure, and that's why I wanted to do it before we got to the big guns on the 22nd. I wanted to give you guys something that you may not be able to find anywhere else on this YouTube pavilion of censorship and torture that we that we operate on. It's a very, very strange story, and I don't even know what it means, to be honest with you, except there's so many players in this story that I've been wanting to do this for quite a while. And the people in the JFK research community know who Robert Edward Webster is.
There was one association, I think, just from the pictures you sent, that may tie him to Robinault by proxy.
Is that true? Robinault by proxy disease?
Doesn't Robinault work for Rand?
Okay, well, we're going to get into that. It's a little confusing because there's Rand Development Corporation and then there's the Rand Corporation. It's two separate companies.
Okay.
Right. That's why, which I will explain. It's not that simple to explain. I guess that's why we're putting off this episode for a while. But
well, did you see, before we get deep into it, did you see the article? I put it up on Locals, the Vanity Fair article about Rob Reiner and Alec Baldwin.
No, I have not.
Written by our friend James Robinault.
Oh, bravo, Robinault. Trifecta, putting them all together. Bravo. I found out yesterday watching Mission Impossible that Alec Baldwin plays Hunley in the in the series. He's killed in the last episode, so he may not be coming back. But I just thought did he just say he was Hunley? It was like shocking to me that this guy's who has been following us now. Vivian Barnes had something on him because Baldwin was posting Viva hosting for Alex Jones on his Instagram.
Or whatever it was.
So now he's after Viva, Alec Baldwin.
No, he's a fan.
Right.
He was sharing the something about the blackfish or the marine world. There's some sort of controversy going down there.
Let me tell you something. This guy watches just our show and Viva and Barnes, like everyone else in our universe. Everything else is bullshit on me. I'm not involved with any of this stuff. Everything's a crock of shit. The stuff I did on Trump is bullshit. Everything's bullshit. That's why I'm going to the JFK convention in Pennsylvania, because I've memorized every single episode by you and Groubert. And I'm going to be doing it verbatim because I have an incredible memory. And we're gonna find out what Alec Baldwin and Rob Reiner present. You're saying that Rob Reiner is going to do it virtually. I've got to do mine in person, Hunley, because I'm a narcissist. I shoot people for a living, Hunley.
Ouch. Okay, so back to less famous.
Back to
Webster.
Robert Webster. So dig this. So this is a rare picture of Webster, but it doesn't really do him justice. Now, Webster, this is a weird guy. Grows up in Ohio. He's born in Pennsylvania, but he grows up in Ohio, mostly in Columbus. And he's a Quaker. And he's a Quaker, not unlike some other Quakers we know, maybe wink, wink, nod, nod to some other Quakers. And he's got a wife named Martha. He's got 2 kids, a 7-year-old named Michael, a 6-year-old named Ann. And he works in plastics. Now, plastics is relatively new. Plastics, it's all about plastics, as Dustin Hoffman says. The future is in plastics, Dustin Hoffman is told in The Graduate. And indeed, plastics is a relatively new industry in the 40s and 50s. Mm-hmm. And, Sperry Rand is involved in plastics, and some other companies are involved in plastics. He's involved in plastics, and he suffers from these bizarre fainting spells and goes into shock. Even this is early in his life. He has these some sort of medical condition. I don't think it's grand mal seizures, because he doesn't have the epileptic seizures. He kind of sees that his mother has it too later. He kind of sees that he's going to faint or black out and go into shock. And he actually warns people that it's going on to prepare them that he's going down. But anyway, so he marries this woman. He gets a job in plastics, and she gets a job as a hairdresser. And again, this is a crazy story. That's his wife. It's not the only wife, but it's the first wife in the story. And she will come to figure into this story. So he gets a job at the Rand Development Corporation. Now you say, well, that sounds like the Rand Corporation. The Rand Corporation and the Rand Development Corporation, even though they're both CIA infiltrated, are 2 separate operations. Rand Corporation, which is what Daniel Ellsberg steals the Pentagon papers from for our viewers at home, is named after Research and Development, RAND. It's based in Santa Monica, has headquarters in, obviously, Washington, D.C., and that's where Ellsberg had stolen the Pentagon papers that he had requested that they write as a leftist Democratic think tank. Okay. The Rand Development Corporation, separate entity, is named for this guy's family. The guy's name, if you have a picture of this guy, his name is H.J. Rand. This is a man named Rand, R-A-N-D, whose family he invented so many things, this guy. I can't even get into this guy's invention stuff. Vacuum cleaners, invented the washing machine.
File cabinets, I think I saw, or something.
He invented the craziest crap in the complete genius, multimillionaire genius. And he starts the Rand Development Corporation. So his second in command is a guy named George Bookbinder, and then he's got a guy named Christopher Bird, which we're going to get into. These are all guys working at the Rand Development Corporation, not to be confused with the Rand Corporation. Now that you're confused about the two, I'll tell you they were directly across the street from each other in New York.
Oh,
And
God.
no, we'll get it. No, dude, it's just so crazy. It's just so freaking crazy. Both infiltrated by the CIA. And okay, so Webster goes over to the Soviet Union for 7 weeks. This is in 1958. He goes over there and comes back. And then in 1959, he goes to, they had these like, corporate fairs in Moscow, Eric. You ever go to a corporate thing? You might have done this
Job
years
fairs.
ago. What's it called? Job fairs. Well, I don't know about job fairs, but it was like an exposition.
Okay, yeah.
Where they show where the Rand Corporation, the Rand Development Corporation, would show their wares. And they would show, I know this sounds crazy, but garden hoses. The Russians didn't have garden hoses. They didn't have the spray gun that went on a garden hose. They had no plastics industry to begin with. It was completely in its infancy. They had nothing. Absolutely nothing. They had plastic chairs, then had plastic forks, then had plastic tables. Every single thing that was plastic was in the United States because we invented it. And that's what, one of the benefits of capitalism, coming out of fossil fuels. So they have a program, and we don't know how many O&I people were involved in this, but Webster, like Lee Harvey Oswald, came from the Navy. Obviously, Oswald with the Marines, and Robert Webster about the same height, a little bit older than him, a little bit taller, blondish kind of hair, same sort of a face. He comes out of the Navy, and he's an ex-Navy man. So it turns out that the Navy, and we've discussed this before, it's just a question of how many. It's never really been settled. I've heard the number 13, I've heard the number 36, and I've heard the number 40 of the amount of defectors that the O&I program put behind enemy lines. Yes, that's right. Because I've heard 13 through the Angleton program, the CIA program, and I've heard 36 through the O&I program. And for people who haven't heard this before, in previous episodes, the American intelligence needed human intelligence behind the Iron Curtain. So they had a phony defector program, of which we allege, and others allege, that Lee Harvey Oswald was a part of. Turns out that Robert Webster might have been a part of this also. Webster being a Navy man who was linked to O&I and to these other intelligence operations. But right now in our story, he's working in plastics. And plastics is the future. So at this exposition, he goes over and talks to a Soviet member of the exposition and said he's interested in defecting to the Soviet Union. Okay, if you go back 1 year, he goes over there on another reconnaissance mission for Rand and is doing stuff with plastics again, showing his wear, showing how these things work in this thing. I guess it must have been the year before or a couple of years before. He was over there visiting the Soviet Union and he explores this. He comes back to the United States after that time, and he literally has his wife and kids, the two kids. And I don't know if you have a picture of this. Is there a picture of his family? Because that picture was taken the week he defected. There was a picture
where he's studying the USSR on education.
Yes. This picture here, that's his wife in the middle, the two kids who I mentioned in the intro there. Martha and Anne. Martha's the wife, and Anne is the little girl. She is 6. The boy's Michael, who's 7. Okay. A couple of days later, he flies back to the Soviet Union and defects, leaving his wife and kids behind. It's almost inexplicable. However, there's more to this story than meets the eye. So the Soviet Union doesn't take this lightly. They just go, what guy is going to leave his wife and kids and get on a plane, shown here, and come to the Soviet Union and defect? It doesn't make sense to the KGB. But the KGB says, all right, look, maybe he's got some stuff about plastics we can learn from him. So they give him a battery of tests. They have, what the Soviets did was they have you write down your bio, your entire history on paper, every person you know, every relative you know, every address you know, every contact you know, They give you a complete physical. They give you a mental physical. They get a mental test. They give you all kinds of lie detector tests. And then he got an internal Soviet passport. Now, he goes over to the embassy, the U.S. embassy. This is all in Moscow, by the way, 1959. Goes over to the U.S. embassy where another guy, the month before, named Lee Harvey Oswald, had taken his passport number 1733242, issued 9/10/59, and turned it over to the embassy officials, renouncing his U.S. citizenship. Now this guy comes in. So who does Oswald renounce it to? He renounces it to these two guys. And Eric has a photo of the two guys I was talking about. One guy is John McVicker, and the other guy is Richard Snyder. Now, McVicker and Snyder are the two guys at the embassy. That's McVicker on the left, Snyder on the right. Snyder works for CIA. McVicker is CIA adjacent. Now, there's also another guy there named Oliver Hallett, the commander. Now, Oliver Hallett is also in the embassy. Now, Oliver Hallett is ONI. This is Commander Oliver Hallett. He's also there. He gets into a screaming match with Oswald because Oswald comes in, denounces the United States, says he's going to give secrets to the Soviets on the what he knows about the U-2 spy plane. Hallett, whether it was real or not, gets into a shoving match with Oswald inside the U.S. embassy in Moscow, right? Okay, so Dig, this is a side note. The day of the assassination, Oliver Hallett, nobody knows this. Oliver Hallett is the guy that gets on the phone from the Situation Room in the White House and tells LBJ and the members of the plane flying back to Washington that there is no conspiracy, everything is fine, everything is cool, and the president is now LBJ. It's Oliver Hallett, the same guy in this story, I'm telling you, somehow migrates back to the United States where he's running the Situation Room the day of the assassination, November 22nd, next week, 60 years from that day ago. Oliver Hallett will get on the Air Force One intercom via phone, telling the members of the flight that there is no conspiracy, the assassin has been apprehended, and that the cabinet is over the Pacific, flying to Hawaii, has been turned around. That's Oliver Hallett. But in this story, Oliver Hallett is ONI, and he's in the embassy in Moscow. Gets into a fight with Oswald, real or not, we don't know. Oswald had been at the Atsugi base, as many of you are aware, about 30 miles outside of Tokyo. The Atsugi base was the base in the caves where they kept a couple of U-2 spy planes. And Oswald was working in the bubble, which is the hut, which is air traffic control for the base with another couple of guys, and he was privy to the elevation of the U-2 spy plane. The Blackbird was there, and a couple other planes were there in Japan. Atsugi was an MK Ultra base. It was also a base where they tested LSD on soldiers who were there. Oswald will later famously go to the assistant district attorney of New Orleans, a guy named Gillian, and ask him if LSD is legal to use upon his return to New Orleans, which is a story for another day. The reality of it was that MK Ultra, the program itself under Richard Helms, was being used at Atsugi. Whether it was being used on Japanese or Americans is subject to debate. However, there was hypnosis going on there, and there was MK Ultra programming going on there. That being said, Oswald, before he defects, or as he's defecting, is in that embassy the month before this guy, Robert Webster. So the Soviets and the KGB and the MDV will come into play in the story. The Soviets are laughing, the KGB are laughing among themselves, because what regular people don't understand is the Soviets can see groupings, mathematical groupings, Eric, of defectors. And they will be laughing that all of a sudden 29 people decide, and in their Soviet sense of humor, they just keep saying, McDonald's must have gone out of business in the United States. They would make these Russian jokes to explain to themselves laughingly how all of a sudden they're getting a bunch of disenchanted ex-Marines how preposterous it is that we would deceive the Soviets into believing that all of these defectors would suddenly, from the armed services, decide they've had enough with the United States. The Soviets didn't buy it, of course, but nevertheless, we just wanted boots on the ground. And what we've seen with Oswald is that he ran around Minsk gathering human intelligence. And the human intelligence he gathered, he strapped to his chest and he brought back in the form of a diary. Now, it's not military secrets. What Oswald was doing was he was gathering information like what time the bus ran, how do you put on a TV, how does the phone work, he went into the GUM department store and bought nuts and bolts and crap and a radio and some other shit just to see how you did this. And that is all part and parcel of his assignment in Minsk. He didn't pick Minsk. They did. They sent him to Minsk, where he ends up working in a radio factory as a sheet metal radio specialist, constructing radios. You know, it was a big factory. He was living so large that he was making more money than the director of the radio factory. Let me just put it that way. From Red Cross money, the apartment that he had, the situation that he had with his salary, and he then writes letters home saying, "Go F yourselves, I'm done with America," knowing damn well that these letters are going to be intercepted. You know, I mean, this is part and parcel of what they were supposed to do. Oswald will later come back when he redefects. He will go through Rotterdam and he will go to a place called a villa house. A villa house was a rooming house in Rotterdam, shown here on the left. On the right is a guy doing an interview about this revelation, which came out in 1999 or so. He's doing it. It's Mathenesaron 250. It's 250 Mathenesalon Street is the address. Oh, you see it there. Okay. On the bottom left, this is from Oswald's diary. And they showed up and stayed there and were debriefed, according to me and some others, by CIA at that time. Now, then he went on to Fort Worth, eventually coming to New York, and then New York flying from JFK Airport, which wasn't named JFK yet, but nevertheless, my dad was still working and worked at Idlewild. It wasn't JFK yet because JFK was still alive. So he flies to Idlewild, where he gets a flight to Fort Worth, and the rest is history that we'll reveal November 22nd. Okay, but getting back to Robert Webster, a month before Oswald defects, Robert Webster defects to the Soviet Union. So he goes in, there he is, he's got the hat, but he's kind of got this look of like, maybe I'm an agent, maybe I'm not. It's up to you to say, yeah, see? Okay, but Webster goes to that same embassy. And he goes to that same embassy in Moscow. It's the only embassy, the U.S. embassy in Moscow. And who does he meet? He meets McVicker and he meets Snyder, the two guys. Snyder, of course, famously OSS, before he was CIA. That's Snyder on the right. And these are actual ambassadors. These are actual embassy diplomats, you know, the diplomatic cover, Eric. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So they actually have a title there. I forget, assistant to ambassador to Moscow or something. I forget what their actual title is. Consulate or something. Yeah, counselor or something like that. Anyway, so he does not go alone, Robert Webster. He brings with him, this is really weird. He brings with him two guys. He brings with him that guy Rand, and he brings with him Bookbinder. Now, who is Bookbinder? Here comes the ambulance bringing Bookbinder back to my house. Bookbinder is OSS. This is Bookbinder here. He's got friends, relatives in the Soviet Union from 1917, George Bookbinder. He is second in command of the Rand Development Corporation, second in command. The first in command is Rand himself, the picture you showed before. So you show this guy Rand and you show these two guys, right? And the two of them, here's Rand, right? Why would they go with a guy defecting to the Soviet Union to help him defect? This is the funniest thing I've ever read. There's also a guy with him named Christopher Bird. Now, Christopher Bird is the third in command at the Rand Corporation. Here's Christopher Bird, this late in life. Christopher Bird wrote a book years later called The Thinking Life of Plants. and he was involved. He was involved in MK Ultra, the Rand Corporation, CIA, and also remote viewing. He was the Men Who Stare at Goats, the thinking life, the thought life of plants was one of his books. He would end up working with Esther Brooks and the CIA, MK Ultra. These are the three guys, the top three guys at the Rand Development Corporation, not to be confused with the Rand Corporation, although it's linked to the Rand Corporation because they're both CIA corporations, if that's not confusing enough.
The Secret Life of Plants.
Sorry, The Secret Life of Plants, which is the equivalent, the plant equivalent of the Men Stare at Goats. Okay,
No, it's a huge book. I mean, that.
Oh no, and he's written a couple other books, yeah. And he taught a very famous guy, Robert Bird.
Christopher Bird.
Christopher Bird. I'm sorry. There's another guy named Robert Bird who ended up being a Klansman working in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is BIRD, not BYRD. Just if I remember correctly. So anyway, so these guys go to the embassy to vouch for Robert Webster defecting to the Soviet Union. You go, well, that's a little weird. Okay, so Webster gives up his passport in the U.S. and he has a girlfriend there. Now, the girlfriend is smoking hot, a honeypot, who works as a translator at the Hotel Ukraine in Moscow and a waitress on the side. But she's a translator, and she is married, has a kid. I'm not really sure what happened to her husband. They become an item on his previous trip, and he leaves his wife and kids in Ohio, and he hooks up with this smoking hot Russian. I'm trying to remember. Her first name was like Slavlanka or something. Anyway, so they become an item, and they are then flown to Vera Ivchenko. Vera Ivchenko is her full name, and she will become important for this story because she is a KGB agent. And the reason she's important as a KGB agent, and because she's a honeypot, is very similar to the story we are learning about Marina Oswald. Marina Oswald came out of Leningrad, where her father mysteriously was dead. The mother that she was living with may or may not have been her mother. We're not really sure about Marina Oswald. But she was a honeypot in the embassy system for the KGB. And Marina Oswald ends up sleeping with a embassy official. I forget which country it was. It was either Austria or Germany or one. I'd have to look it up what country it was. But her cover gets blown, is the point. And she's kicked out of Leningrad for prostitution, quote unquote. And she ends up going to Minsk to live with her MVD, MVD being military intelligence police. Her uncle is a Communist Party official and a high-ranking, a lieutenant colonel, I believe, in MVD, the military intelligence police. So she goes to live with that aunt and uncle, and that's when she meets Lee Harvey Oswald at a dance, although it's highly disputed as to when they met, who they met, where they met, what day they met. Everything about it is disputed. But she does meet him, and they do become a couple, and they do have a child. The same thing happens with Robert Webster. Robert Webster hooks up with Vera and immediately gets her pregnant, and they become a couple. They are flown from Moscow to Leningrad, where he gets a job with her. She gets a job there too at the Leningrad Scientific Institute of Plastics, if you can imagine a more direct name. So he is now embroiled and ensconced in the Soviet system to develop their plastics industry. That's what his expertise is, Eric.
Makes sense.
Right. Now, we take a lot of this stuff for granted, but his wife back in America divorces him. She remarries with someone else. There's all kinds of New York Times articles about this, about his departure and stuff, not the stuff we're talking about. The defector to Soviet back to undo is wrong. Voice of defector, voice of suspicions. Anyway, so he's over there living with her, working with her, and developing a family with Vera. Meanwhile, Oswald is doing the same thing in a giant apartment complex in Minsk. The apartment complex that Robert Webster lives in is brand new, and Soviet officials are on a waiting list to get in there to live in this beautiful Leningrad massive apartment complex that he's now ensconced in. It's a very interesting setup for this guy. He's also paid a good amount of money. He also lives pretty large, and he also, functions as a Soviet member, as a KGB official in a lot of ways. The KGB, before he gets on the plane to Leningrad in Moscow, the KGB throws him a party. He actually has a party in his name in Moscow before he gets on the plane to go to Leningrad for the Rand Development Corporation, as their extended wing.
Well, okay. Felt welcome.
So he gets a letter. From his father. His father says, your mother has had a complete mental nervous breakdown over this. And this could be a phony letter, because the same thing happened with Oswald, where his mother got injured in a store and he said that he had to go home. I remember the story. Marguerite Oswald fell down in a store, and Oswald had to go home and get a leave of absence or something from the Marines. So this guy, Webster, gets a letter from his father saying that your mother has had a complete mental breakdown, and he begins to apply to give up his Soviet citizenship and go back to the United States. His mission is over. He's there from 59 to 62. He goes into the embassy and he says, I want to regain my U.S. citizenship. And a month before he did this other guy did the same thing, named Lee Harvey Oswald. They leave a month apart. They depart a month apart. Oswald says to the embassy officials, hey, you guys hear what happened? What happened with Webster? And they go, what? And he says, yeah, how's Webster doing? And they go, look, we don't know about Webster. He defected. He goes, all right. And he gets all through the embassy. This is documented that he asked about Webster. So there is some connection between Oswald and Webster. He asked the embassy officials there in Moscow about Webster. So
I'm not sure how they wouldn't be connected. I mean, how many defectors?
Well, the Warren Commission denied they had any connection. That's why I'm mentioning it. The Warren Commission denied that these two guys knew each other. There's been a incredible stone wall built to separate Webster, because if you take down that wall and connect Webster to Oswald, then you have a Soviet defector phony program, Eric. That's why, yeah.
By the way, you mentioned, what was it? So we're looking at what, 2.5 years each were there?
Yeah, 59 to 62.
Coincidentally, that's about the length of an enlistment.
Well, for what it's worth.
I'm just saying. A military enlistment is anywhere from about 2.5 years to 4 years. So,
okay. Well, unlike Oswald, he gets debriefed by the CIA in a safe house. He then gets debriefed at Langley when he comes back for 2 weeks. He then gets debriefed behind closed doors in the Senate House Intelligence Subcommittee for 2 weeks behind closed doors. This is Webster. This is what, unlike Oswald, Webster gets he renounces U.S. citizen to return. It's all in the papers. It's a big splash, unlike the Oswald version that has no news. And they're very similar. A month later, he redefects. Oswald came back the month before him. Now, all of a sudden, this is where it gets really interesting, because the House Assassinations Committee goes through, this is now 1978, the House Assassinations Committee goes through the address book of a woman named Marina Oswald. And in that address book in Leningrad is the address of Robert Webster. And there's, and she denies it years later. She then at a party says mistakenly that she was mistakenly, I don't know how you could mistake this, she said that her husband's name was Robert Webster. Instead of Lee Oswald, she said her husband's name was Robert Webster at a party in Dallas years later. Not years later, years before the House Assassination Committee, but at a party like in 62, 63 upon the return, possibly 64. It might have been after the assassination. I take that back. It might have been a little bit later. But anyway, so there's some linkage to the two. Now, the linkage with the odd linkage to MK Ultra with Christopher Bird, who becomes Mr. MK Ultra, and Robert Webster. People believe that Robert Webster did not do what Lee Harvey Oswald did. He did not take Russian language. He did not take intelligence tests. He did not go to the language school up by Big Sur. And they can't believe that this guy woke up one day, gave up his whole family and kids, and dropped everything and went to the Soviet Union. There is a strong amount of information that he may have been MK Ultra, Derek. The fainting spells, there's a lot of stuff about Webster that doesn't exactly fit what happened to Oswald. I mean, Oswald ends up in a hospital after he attempts to commit phony suicide in the hotel in Moscow. He ends up in a hospital in a special wing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't give a fuck. Fuck this shit. Anyway, so he ends up in this hospital and he disappears off the grid for like 12, 13 days, Oswald, in his legend, even with the Soviet records that they have. And then Webster disappears occasionally also. So both of these guys disappear off the grid where they could have been MK Ultra. I don't know the extent of the damage they could have done to Oswald, since there's much more of a track record with Oswald. But the situation with Webster is really odd. He ends up in a nursing home in Massachusetts, and there's nothing wrong with him. This is later in life. This is in the 90s. And he's healthy, but he's in a nursing home and he's a vegetable. Okay. Which is not good. The nursing home is near the island that's owned by Michael Payne's family. And keep in mind, both families, the Webster family and the Payne family, are Quakers, liberal Quakers, Eric. So you've got that similarity between the two families. Is it possible, by the way, and Webster had a security clearance. I don't know what level. They claimed it wasn't military. Obviously, there's multiple levels of security clearances, as you're well aware. But he did, according to intelligence sources, have a security clearance. I don't know what level that was, but nevertheless, there's a lot about Webster that the Warren Commission wanted to separate Oswald from. And he refused to talk to any reporters, and he was living in the nursing home, and he died in the nursing home, I think, in 1999. That's how long he lived. So he was around for quite a while. So what is the connection between Webster and Oswald? Some people believe that Webster was a double for Oswald, and that Webster ran around Minsk doubling for Oswald, and possibly vice versa, although I haven't heard the vice to the versa. I've heard that Robert Webster would show up in Minsk. Now, he had an internal passport. Oswald did not have that. He had a complete, they have, unlike our country, they have two types of passports, internal and external. Internal yeah, I know, it's weird, right? Internal allows you to move around internally within the Soviet Union. Oswald did not have that. He had a visa, or whatever he had, a Soviet visa. But some people believe that Robert Webster doubled for Oswald and was running around Minsk doing stuff. Now, Oswald had a crew around him of Pavel Gorbachev, who was the son of a general. He had a woman named Ella German, who was not an intelligence operative. She was the first girl he fell in love with in Minsk was a large-breasted Jewess named Eller German, who would later migrate to Israel, where I think she lived until fairly recently, and finally passed away. But she was not an intelligence operative. She actually said to him, he asked her to marry him. Nobody knows this story. This is before he met Marina Oswald. He asked her to marry him, and she said, like a smart Jew that she was, she said, "I see no future with you. You have left your own country. How would I live with you? It's ridiculous. I'm not interested." And she dumps him. And he gets kind of bent out of shape about getting dumped by her. And then that's when literally the next day, they fling Marina Oswald at him at a union dance in a hall. And the 19-year-old Marina comes into the room with red ruby lipstick, looking like something out of a movie. And the sea parts, and he sees Marina Oswald, and it's love at first sight, or so they say. I think they were both working on a mission. I think both Lee and her. Now, this is fairly well documented at this point, that the Soviets would have their female agents marry these guys, and we've discussed this in multiple episodes, to go back to the United States, get into these kerfuffles with them, get divorced, and then be able to operate in the United States. Angleton and Helms were hip to this, and they were not going to let this happen. When Webster leaves, he makes no attempt to take his woman and kid with him back to the United States. No attempt, no mention at all in the embassy in Moscow, Eric. Goes back to his wife and kids in Columbus, Ohio, and she's already moved on. Although she still loves him, she thinks there's something wrong with him mentally. You know what I mean? So there's something happened with Robert Webster. I'm not really sure to this day whether he lives in apartment 18, and Marina said her friend lived in apartment 9. Huge complex. So it's really interesting. The building was completely KGB anyway. You know, if you look at the map of who was around both their buildings, especially the one in Minsk, the KGB training school is there. They've got Cubans learning how to be KGB spies in another place, all within walking distance of the building that Oswald's in. I assume the same is true for the building in Leningrad that Webster is placed in, because they tend to put these people very close to where they are themselves. They don't put them on the outskirts of the empire. But so anyway, so he leaves his wife and kids, the Soviet wife and kids, never to be seen again, or kid, daughter named Svlanta, and her, the Vera, in the Soviet Union. I don't know what became of them. She was obviously an agent working in their honeypot division. And he comes back and eventually, I think, just has a mental breakdown again and blacks out again. So there, like I said, there may have been quite a bit of MK Ultra involved in the Webster story, and some people believe the Oswald story itself, that he was MK Ultra, although I don't buy into that. Others do, for what it's worth. It's not my ballywick.
Interesting.
Okay.
It looks like we have a Gary Hill in the chat, who I think wrote a book on this. The other
Gary Hill wrote a bunch of articles in the 90s. Gary Hill's the leading expert on Webster in the culture of JFK research, for sure. Gary Hill specialized in this particular story on Webster. And I haven't read the book, but I understand Gary Hill's written a book. He wrote a bunch of articles in the 90s, as I recall, for various conferences. And this is his thing. This is Gary Hill's thing.
Okay, well, I think he's in the chat.
Okay. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard, Gary. We're finally doing your story 150 years too late.
Anyway, cool.
Hope Gary's going to be in Dallas. We'll be in Dallas next week. So not that we're talking about this, but we're going to be talking about some other stories in Dallas.
Yeah, I think Paul Blau wrote the review on the Gary Hill book too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and Paul's got a new book out that's coming out with Jim Diogenio and a bunch of other people, I presume. I don't think that Rob Reiner and Baldwin have a book coming out with James Robinault. I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but there he is. He's here. Mm-hmm. Rolling out again. So crazy. All right. So you wanted to save this till last, though.
Which one? Oh yeah, this is a famous split of the two characters to show the similarities in them. I mean, he's a couple of years older than Oswald, but there is a similarity in appearance. I don't know if people in the chat would agree with that, but there is something to that. There is something to it. Is he a dead ringer for him? No, but neither is any of these people. Neither is Robert Oswald. Neither is Michael Payne. Neither is any of these so-called doubles. But it's pretty close, Eric. What do you think?
Definite similarity.
Yeah.
And the problem too is we're looking at a picture, and sometimes in real life, people can look really similar, but then they just take pictures differently.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
absolutely,
it is very weird.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I could see people mistaking them for each other. Apparently, that happened a lot from the bit that I gleaned. That people confuse them all the time.
Yeah, I don't know what he brought back, but behind closed doors, he was in there for a long time, Webster, in that Senate subcommittee, House subcommittee, I think it was. And I don't know what I mean. Look, unlike Oswald, this guy was publicly debriefed in a way. I mean, they took him to Langley, and then the subcommittee was apparently public, at least the knowledge of it, not the testimony.
Okay, and Gary Hill just said Scott Webster is here too. I don't know if he's related to or not.
Well, everybody in the whole family is coming on the chat.
Yeah, it's like, hey, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. We got Oswald's family next week is going to come on the show.
Yeah, and hey, Scott's a member. So
hey,
thank you very much.
Right on, Scott. Right on. Is Scott a Quaker also? Is the family still Quakers?
I don't know. That's wild.
I think the nursing home was in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Or I forget where it was. It was near the Forbes Devil's Island that the Forbes people owned, right?
Okay, so Scott is the son.
Yeah. Right,
okay,
right.
Awesome. Wow.
Wait, what happened to Michael? I don't understand. What happened to Michael Webster?
Don't know.
Did he change his name to Scott?
maybe there's two sons.
Oh, okay. No, I mean there was a son and a daughter when he left, Michael, and then Anne. So who is Scott?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's Michael on the right, I presume, Anne on the left. Who is Scott Webster?
Well, maybe it's another wife.
Oh, okay. Well, then I don't know. God bless him.
Oh, here we go. I am a son, not a Quaker. I am an atheist.
Okay. From the woman who's Martha?
I don't know. We'll
Okay.
find out.
All right.
It's always interesting when the chat's interacting.
Yeah, this is very.
It's like when Vince Palomaro came on.
Yeah. We're going to get Oswald's daughters in one of these days. We'll get the two Oswald daughters to come on.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Are we going to have a Marina episode? Maybe.
Yeah. We're doing, yeah.
She's still around, so we'd love to.
So are the girls. I mean.
Oh, for sure.
Well, I hope we did your father justice for the limited amount of information I have. So I did want to do his story for a long time, and I hope it was a house and.
Okay, his dad remarried when he came.
Oh, okay, yeah, right, okay, right.
That makes sense because
makes sense.
They got divorced and yeah.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. Woo, that was close. I thought I screwed something. Well, we have any other commenters with?
I've got some super chats coming up.
Okay,
before we get into that,
Right.
I thought we needed to talk about Dallas.
Oh, you're right. Okay, let's talk about Dallas. Oh my God! I hope the Websters show up. Webster and what's it? Gary Hill.
Gary Hill. Yeah.
Gary, we're going to be at the Lorenzo at the Lancer conference. So if you guys are around, we'd love to meet up with you.
And by the way, folks, this is Gary Hill's book.
I ordered the book. I haven't gotten it yet. I just ordered it. Yeah.
But if people want to check it out, I think he's a primary authority on it, and be good for people to get. Walt Brown wrote the intro, which is
I love Walt Brown, so that's a stamp of approval right there.
You know who doesn't love Walt Brown?
Judith Berry Baker.
Judith Berry Baker does not like Walt Brown very much.
Sorry to hear that. Okay, so this is just virtual tickets, folks. All the regular tickets we've sold out. Michael disappeared. Disappeared. Interesting. The regular tickets are sold out, the hard copy. The virtual, you don't have to get off your fat ass. You don't have to. You could be in your underwear. They don't even care what you wear if you buy a virtual ticket. You could just sit there with your dog, your basset hound hunting dog, watching me and Hunley and all the other superstars of the JFK conference present their presentations, and then download it or give it as a gift for Christmas to that stupid nephew of yours who won't listen to reason, no matter how many books you send him by Gary Hill and Vince Palomara and Jim DiEugenio. This video may convince that knucklehead who's going to Penn State that there was a conspiracy to kill the president. Or you could watch it yourself, download it, and keep it for the rest of your life. We don't really care.
You can watch it multiple times.
You can watch it multiple times.
And yeah.
Right. And just look for loopholes, to quote W.C. Fields.
Yep. And I know last I checked, over 200 tickets were sold.
Oh, no, it's 400. Oh, right. No, 200 for, yeah. It's getting towards 300 for us. The place only holds 300. But I think 100 of those are virtual. So, okay. So the virtual tickets, if you use our secret code, what's the secret code, Hunley?
Untold 15.
If you
don't
use
don't let it get out.
Don't let it get out. If you use Untold 15, you get 15% off of the virtual ticket itself, which is a 3-day festival pass for the Woodstock Music and Arts JFK Festival of Love, Peace, Happiness, and Magic Bullets. So you get the whole thing you pay one price plus the 15%. Oh, and she said to tell everyone, this is the woman running the conference. She's 7 months pregnant, has a toddler at home, and is sending out the codes this week. She has to do them individually, all 400. So she begged for mercy from our audience. I'll be at Doubletree. Okay. Well, we went to Doubletree.
We met Phil Nelson over there.
Nelson was. I think Nelson's retired. His wife won't let him go anymore. But
Gary, if you're on X, Twitter, whatever it is, please ping me later, and we'll see.
Anyway, so I strongly urge you get your virtual tickets before that's cut off. This is something that you will keep for a long time, and we'll be on there Saturday night prime time. I think at 5:00 Dallas time, whatever that is, and the rest of the earth. I'm not really sure. But we'll be going there on Friday. I'll be at the Allen Library Friday night at 7:30, giving a presentation on that thing, which is filmed, which will be broadcast.
I think it might be live. Will it be live?
I think it's live. I know it holds 250 people, and he's selling out for the tickets of the library. It's free, but I think you have to get a ticket. One of those deals.
Sure.
But I don't know if it's a live stream or what's going on with that, but that's filmed. There's a lot of those up there. They're really good. Robert is up there, Grogan and others have been on this thing that you're seeing, the Groubert Proctor phone call, which is very good, about calling Raleigh.
Mark Shaw, if you're really into Dorothy Kilgallen.
The Kilgallen collection is on there. I don't think Judith Berry Baker has been on there, but nevertheless, the situation with the virtual tickets is I got
Randy.
Randy knows what he's doing. Randy has figured out this thing and how to do it. Now, getting back to Dallas, we're also, when we're doing the thing on what date is that? The Saturday night is the 18th.
Saturday night is our appearance.
The 18th. We're going to reveal a sample of what Hunley's been working on in his workshop in up north, where Hunley goes to the North Pole with the different elves. He's been working on this artificial intelligence version of my scripts on Oswald that we're going to reveal a sample of at the conference. This is what we're going for, is to reveal the tease. The actual event will occur on November 22nd on Wednesday at 12:30 Central Time, Dallas time, when the first shots rang out from wherever they rang out. Whoever got in there first, we may never know whether it was the Dow Tex building or the overpass or wherever. But we're going to begin at 12:30 Central with one episode for 2 hours of Oswald, the AI version, which will be a pay-per-view situation for locals only. So this is going to be multiple locals platforms, which we're adding on every day. So far, we got Viva and Barnes, and Rich Barris's locals is coming on. And you will receive, for the price of admission, a PDF copy of the script that you'll be able to follow along at home. And I heard a sample of it last night. I was blown away, folks. Hunley's done an amazing job.
I want to take a second and shout out, though, because we have somebody who's helping us.
Okay, well,
James Esparza, the guy who makes our really cool intro and our outro, is working it, and I've been helping him. He has been putting in tons and tons of work, and I want to make sure James gets a hefty shout out, because
thanks, James.
He's putting in, I mean, so much effort. We're getting Foley in there, things like the bus pulling up, and really trying to.
It really sounds great. So you're going to be seeing in the background. You'll be seeing a montage of photos and documents and news clips going by while you're hearing this radio play, this audio drama unfold on locals, and it'll be a fairly cheap ticket to buy. And you'll get the script, and then you could download that, and we will release additional episodes as time permits, one after another.
And we're also going to be tweaking them as they go. So it's a work in progress. It's primarily an audio drama radio play to start. Over time, and especially as they come out, we may actually revise them, and people who got them can get an updated copy of them with more and more cleaner graphics and things like that.
So these different locals members, the locals creators, for instance, Ori at Locals was advising us on how to do this. They will receive a link or a code at your locals station, whatever your locals platform is, and as will our members and other regular locals followers. Eric will be able to purchase the code, right? I presume. Okay.
Right. And I think it'll probably be like you'll get it for free if you sign up for a year with us, or that kind of thing too.
Right.
It's similar to how Dinesh D'Souza has done his, but we're working it out. It's coming up, but we're under fire right now. Trust me, it's very, very long days and long evenings. But
right. So that'll be next Wednesday. Tomorrow, not this Wednesday, next Wednesday, the 22nd of November, 12:30. We're doing that specifically as a commemoration to the 60th anniversary of the assassination of JFK in Dallas. So that's why we're doing it then. Plus, in the middle of the day, it's 2 hours long. It's a good time to do it. And whatever locals platform you're on, we're going to try to add on additional locals. I think Dr. Drew's locals is coming on board. So we're going to expand. But right now, we got a pretty vast audience with the 3 or 4 of us on locals. So tickets will be available, I presume, on Tuesday at the latest, right, Eric? Or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or those 3 days, or they're gonna start asking you, so we might as well figure this out.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right, we'll figure it out. Okay,
yeah, we will figure it out.
We're gonna get back to you, but get the virtual ticket to the conference, and then in the conference you'll hear a sample of what we're doing, and that we'll discuss it there in that conference, I guess, and then have dinner with all these maniacs and talk about magic bullets and all kinds of other theories.
Especially the maniacs. Speaking of maniacs, sadly, I see a Rumble rant came in from Alan, a Wolfer. Eric, I won't see you in Dallas after all. Amtrak canceled my train yesterday and refused to fly. I'll be watching virtually in my boxer briefs.
Right on.
While I perfect my bourbon and old-fashioned recipe, and he sent a $400 Rumble rant.
Oh, God, that's ridiculous. Don't even accept that. That's absurd.
Jesus.
That's ridiculous.
Wow.
That's right. Does he have a dog? Can we get him a dog to watch with him on the couch?
Yes, he definitely needs
bloodhound. This is a guy.
No, an emotional support Oswald.
He's the guy who sounds like he'd have a bloodhound. You know what I mean? Like to go after criminals, even in retirement. You know.
Oh yeah, he's a badass dude. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so let's go through some of this. Jason
Okay.
Willis is a member for 2 months. Hello,
Woo!
Truth Seekers. Trump 24 bust. Armando Salinas, sorry, is a new member. Welcome. We have David Parsons. I grew up in Dallas and was at North Dallas or North Texas in Denton when JFK was shot. I saw Oswald get shot on TV. Oswald's last word was "ow."
It wasn't, he's making a joke, but it was more like, oh, I mean, if there really was, I think there was a word, and I think it was ugh or oh.
Well, the shot, I mean, it would be similar to being punched in the stomach.
Yeah.
It might have been like, oof. Yeah. Let me see. Joshua Turnage. Larry Flint made an ad offering $1 million reward to solve JFK case. I think he was shot because of it. I believe the guy who shot him was MK Ultra.
That might be true. We may have to do a story on that. That might be true also. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have heard that.
All right. Tesla R1 with 20 pounds. Thank you for all the fascinating information you provide. We'll be hoping the virtual event to hear more.
Okay.
Awesome. Thomas Kiefaber. The Secret Life of Plants bomb film boasts an extraordinary soundtrack by Stevie Wonder.
That's right.
Really good, little known, and well worth checking out.
I think he had an album called The Secret Life of Plants, unless that's the soundtrack of the movie. But Stevie Wonder has a song or an album called The Secret Life of Plants. So you might want to check that out. This is not a minor thing. I mean, this is a pretty major story, but it ties into Webster, and it's very bizarre.
Which is, insane. Great Dallas Blues Band, Big Bow and the Arrows. Where's their card?
I don't know the band, and I don't know why they would have a card.
Your Crump deck.
My
Heroes.
They're not in there. So I don't think they have bands in there so much as individuals, but.
And yes, there's a growing call for honeypot cards.
That's funny. Funny. Yeah.
I won't rule
it
out.
There's contemporary honeypots too. I mean.
But no. That literally is not a bad idea.
Ask Anthony Weiner. Ask George Clooney.
Versus our.
Ruby didn't have one. He had George Senator, the gay honeypot.
Hey. But cards are always a possibility down the road. Got to get through the current ones though. Peter Young, since you're demonetized,
Wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't be the first time. No,
last Tuesday's show was demonetized and held up on review. So it's
at gunpoint. These guys, YouTube showed up at gunpoint and took away our money.
Al Gonzalez, what will be the subject matter of your Lancer presentation? Anyone arriving Thursday, see you at the Lorenzo Bar at 7 p.m.
It's going to be AI, Oswald, and the future of JFK investigation. So it's a presentation where we're going to sample some of these the work and talk about the November 22nd, the release of the work. So there's that. And
the history of your time with Oliver creating all
of
it,
and how we got to this crazy point.
Yeah.
That's why we've been putting off doing these episodes on Oswald himself, because we've got 10 hours of Oswald, the miniseries, to release, which I think will be the definitive audio drama of the subject ever done. So this has never been done, people. And,
now, we still will be doing Oswald as episodes here, because I think somebody brought that up. And as far as I know, we're
going to do Marina, that's for sure.
Yeah. So speaking of which, did Marina ever meet Jumbo? David Parsons wants to know.
That I don't think so. She met a lot of other Jumbos. I'll tell you that one. She was quite promiscuous in Dallas, according to my Dallas friends, who said that she was quite the scenester. Received quite a bit of money, by the way, from the American public in cash and in checks in the mail, and later married a guy from a sketchy CIA
Porter.
Married Porter from this radio intel unit of the CIA, and accused Porter of domestic abuse, and became a freelancer, and I believe still working for intelligence to this day. I don't believe she ever stopped.
Could be. I'm her and Ruth. Dr. Strangelove called it Z Bland Corporation.
Okay, you mean the RAND Corporation, right? Again, there's two of them: research and development versus the one named after the RAND family. So, 605 Lexington Avenue or 505 Lex. One was across the street from the other on Lexington Avenue. Oddly enough, why I remember that, I don't know.
Tosh Quinn, brilliant facts and story. Mark and Eric, thank you. Let's see, Mark, thanks for another great show. I do have a question though. Does a basset hound hunting dog hunt for basset hounds, or am I just confused?
No, it only hunts for this woman who plays a CIA agent in the movie with Alec Baldwin as Hunley, named Angela Bassett.
Ah, problem solved. Mystery solved. Scott Bimbo, I stay in a lot of Airbnbs for work all over Arizona. I subscribe all the owners to the show. Awesome.
That's funny. That's very, thank you. Infiltrating behind enemy lines. Very good. He did 10,000 by himself.
Maybe I'll take him.
Imagine you show up at the Airbnb and there it is on the smart TV on YouTube.
That'd be cool. JS, while working with AI, did you ask who killed JFK or about the magic bullet? Not specifically. And the AI we're doing is a little different, but
GBT chat he's talking about here, right? You could ask that.
Yeah. And you probably could. I'm sure it'll say.
You could. I'm sure it'll say a few different things. It might just have the entire Warren Commission poured into it already.
Oh, probably.
I'm guessing, but that probably is true, right?
Oh, for sure. And then no sniper in the nest on Rumble. Eric and Mark, just wondering if there are one or two speakers at the Lancer conference that you are really looking forward to hearing the most.
Well, Robert is speaking, right? He's got
Groden,
Groden, and there was another.
Morley's going to be there. I don't know.
There's a few other people, yeah.
Okay. To be honest, folks, I don't know that we will be watching them live. We're probably going to buy the download and then catch the speakers after.
We're going to buy the download because we're going to be running around interviewing people for this show. So it's a multimedia event for us as well, because we have to interview a lot. I mean, the last time we were there last year, we interviewed all these people and then you saw that footage. So we missed half of the speakers because we were doing our own interviews.
Yeah, and we're going to do that again. I always call it at a conference, they call it the hallway track.
Ooh, but they have a room we go into, right, Eric? A secret room?
There's supposed to be a breakout room, but we've got a schedule, and that's going to be interesting. But
that's bizarre. That's rough.
But hopefully, we'll meet up with people, and I'm sure that we're going to get good material. We got good material last time. We'll get it this time. So that
do we go over to locals this time? What happens now?
We're heading to locals.
Oh, we're going there now. What about can these people come with us, or that they're done?
Well, anybody can go to unstructured.locals.com. I highly recommend it. And you can follow us there for free.
By the way, all these guys were OSS, by the way, before they were CIA, which ties into the Donovan episodes that we did the past couple of weeks, which is where I was going with this thing. These guys from the RAND Development Corporation were guys who had known the Soviet, especially Bookbinder. Bookbinder had tons of relatives in the Soviet Union going back to 1917. And he was OSS under Donovan. So all of these episodes are connected, people. They're not just random crazy crap that I come up with. There is a connection to all of them. Whether we all see it or not is I don't know, but there is a connection.
And there's a lot of connections. So while we're connecting, let's connect over at locals, unstructured.locals.com. There's a link in the description that'll take you right to the episode. Again, you can be a member for free. I highly recommend it. Whether you want to support us or not, just go by. You can watch. There'll be no commercials. We'll be answering locals tips and heading over now.